as we get snow. So if I could have everybody stand for the Pledge of Allegiance in a moment of silence.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank everybody for joining us today. Moving through the agenda, we have the approval for the agenda, so I'd like to have a motion to approve the agenda for our February 11th meeting.
Make a motion that we approve the agenda as presented for the February meeting.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
I'm just trying to earn my paycheck.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those not? All right. Angie, do we have any public comment?
No.
All right. Moving right along. So we have the approval of the minutes. I'll give everybody a couple minutes to review that before we do the approval.
And I will say, on the minutes, I needed more information.
Yes.
Yep, I got that.
Thank you.
So do we have an
We'll
addendum
need
to it?
amend them, yeah.
Okay.
But it's just filling in those details.
On the back.
Yeah, and
Yep.
we do have it, I can. just
Did you
type them in.
determine then
Here you
who
go.
made the bonus proposal?
Mm-hmm.
Did you figure out who made the bonus? Oh,
We believe so.
okay, yeah.
Yep. If everybody's ready, we can have a motion for the approval of the minutes from our December 10th meeting.
Make a motion that we approve the minutes from the December 10th meeting as presented.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any discussions, changes, we'll just putting in, we will have an addendum for the back portion of the minutes. She's filling in that information. And we have the CEO report. I'll give everybody a couple minutes to review it as well.
And I do have a verbal contribution to it.
Okay.
I would be prepared to make the initial motion that we accept the February 2025 CEO report as presented to us, with Jill adding some additional information to it in just a minute, whenever she's ready.
I'll second.
So I guess we're, guess you can add whenever.
All right. Okay, so, looking at, first I'll just address the ADM.
Yeah.
We did have another reduction in ADM. The official count currently waiting to be certified is down to 754. Looking at today's count, it's up to 758. And this is just the nature of where we're at right now. So, always the question is why? Like, what's going on? Where are those? There's a lot of different reasons that we have had some withdrawals, especially within the last 6 weeks. Some of those do deal with things that are way beyond our control, dealing with the current political climate. We have had some families that are relocating and things of that nature, so that has been a challenge. We also have had some DCS removals and involvement in that case as well. And then transportation is always a thing. We've had some disciplinary issues as well. And then we're not always the place that people want their kids to go. So there's not something where I can just pinpoint right now. I will say, obviously that made me go, oh man, where are we at on this? I went back and looked at our enrollment trend data since inception. About every 3 to 4 years, we go through this dip and then we go back up. We know some of the contributing factors that went into that dip this year. We know there have been some programming changes. There have been some other circumstances and whatnot. We also are going to be feeling the impact of the increased expansion with the voucher program, and that has, at least some of the students that we typically get, because their sending school ends in 8th grade, they are now able to go to some of the other schools. There are buses from some of the private schools in Hamilton County that are actually coming and picking up kids in Anderson. So this is, right now, it's kind of batten down the hatches and weather the storm and, you know, take a hard look at ourselves, make sure that people know the cool things that are happening here, make sure that we are still connecting the community. We've done a lot of community events this year, and, you know, just go out and do the thing we do, as well as making sure that every single child that is here, you know, I'm gonna use a Hoosiers moment. It's a very basketball week for me right now, but you know, you get into that moment where he's like, those are my 4 on the court, right? Then these are our kids. This is the group we'll take care of. We'll serve them better than anybody can for those kiddos, and we'll be fine. Always, obviously, we don't really talk about our kids and their monetary value, right? That's not something that we really push out there, because, you know, our kids are a little bit more than those numbers for us. But there is a budget constraint there. We have already started trimming, and, you know, we could anticipate that this is coming if you look at kind of that trend data there. And when we did our amended budget, there are places in there that are easily just not spent right now and done next fiscal year, or find new funding sources. So we are good to go in that area. Not really, hey, yay, but great to see that number have gone up higher, but is what it is, and we'll take care of the ones we got. So next thing I wanted to note, under our staffing, you'll see resignations we received. We did receive a resignation with basically a 2-week notice from Sahara McIntyre. She was a new hire this year. She's amazing. And she is an elementary teacher. Unfortunately, there were some housing issues. The home that she was living in, landlord sold. So it's nothing against us, but she had to move, and that's that. So with that plan, with Sahara, again, tough loss because she was really great. Betty Van Alstyne, who has been in our elementary classroom for a long time and is our neuroscience teacher at the elementary. She is now back in the classroom to cover that classroom. We also have an incredible student teacher who's got a lot of promise, a lot of potential, and so we've actually moved him in there in that class, and our intention is once he is finished with this program, he's through Ball State, that he will just take over that classroom. So he's student teaching in that classroom with Betty Van Alstyne, one of our major veteran teachers who is bringing a lot of leadership and calm to that hallway anyways, because our 4th and 5th graders can be a little spicy. We'll go with that. So elementary has adapted to that extremely well. I'm very proud of kind of how they're pivoting with that, and that the whole time that conversation is how are we going to best serve these kids? How are we going to remain consistent? How do we make sure that we don't lose anything? Because we've made a lot of ground in there. So it's a great plan to get us through until Eric graduates. That's the student teacher. And Ball State does have a program where they have put the option there to accelerate student teaching. So instead of doing 16 weeks, I think he can do 10, which possibly if he does that and he passes his portfolio ed TP, is that the right? MTPA, there we go. I was throwing teachers pay teachers in there. It's fine. That then he can just start then. If not, he stays in the student teaching with Betty's support. As far as neuroscience goes, Chaz Van Alstyne does have a similar last name, is our long-term sub in that position. Chaz has been a fantastic sub for us over the last year or so, really connects with the kids, very calm, cool guy. And so he's working with Betty, making sure that neuroscience is also happening the way we need it to. So that's a staffing update on that. And then I gotta take you down to page 4. So, hot off the presses. We did have a closeout on the audit today with an asterisk on that. Our audit went extremely well. It was extremely long, way longer than we've ever had it, because telling you, hey, we're just now finishing, I'm supposed to be telling you that in December. But because of the way the single audit happened with this, we have to have 750,000. We basically ended up having 2 single audits to get to that number in federal funding. So we had to do a single audit for the National School Lunch Program, and then a single audit for Title I, which double the work, right? Double the fun. So we did get through that. We have 0 findings in the federal programs as far as school lunch program goes. Same with Title I, there were no findings. They found us to be fully compliant in all things we're supposed to. We did have a finding with, and it's not really the financial part, it's a state compliance. It's the birth certificates again.
Oh, yeah.
But we're down to 7 this time.
Yay.
So there's that. Angie is continuing to audit those files. We have found that if they pull kids who we still do not have documents for next year, and she shows that, yes, I've spent like 2 follow-up emails, they will take them off our list. I will also be presenting with you guys in March about our enrollment documentation because not all of our families can get a hold of a birth certificate. Some of them are born out of state. I know some of you have heard me rant about my son who was born in Baltimore, and it took us 18 months to get the copy. And so there's other wording in the statute that basically says a reasonable verification, reasonable source. So if they brought in a doctor's letter or something of that nature, that can also verify the birthday. And I will be very specific in our wording on our enrollment documents so that we are covered there. The reason the state does check for birth certificates, they check for residency, those type of things, as a reminder, is due to one of our neighbors over in Delaware County with a charter that no longer has it, but there may have been ghost children that didn't exactly exist either way. So that added a new audit burden to the rest of us. So that's just part of it, but it doesn't mean anything about our financials. These are all kids that they had enrollment packets with signatures and they're here, they've got attendance records, just not one piece on our checklist. So
It's pretty much a given every year. You're going to have a few of those. They've got to find something.
yeah,
Fortunately, that's about all they can find, so that's good.
yeah, and honestly, if it's a birth certificate and we can verify the human is there, and I could actually just say, hi, this is that human. Here, I want you to meet, Joey. That's much better than then saying, oh, financially you're off, because we don't have any actual financial findings. We didn't have any missing ticket stubs. We didn't have a missing credit receipt. We didn't have a credit card receipt. We didn't have a delayed deposit or any of those things.
That's always a popular one, yeah.
It is. Those are the big ones they find.
That's great.
They found nothing there.
Good.
So, with all that being said, now I get to tell you the caveat on that, the asterisk. So, first they proposed that we were going to have a material weakness finding, and Dave, you're just going to love this one. It's the CFIG grant. So that lovely $520,000. In any other realm of federal grants we get, state grants we get, when they have us do a grant application, they make us sign assurances, they have us put a budget together, it has to be detailed, we say exactly how we're going to spend it, and then they tell us the time period we have to spend it. In that time period, if you don't spend it, you forfeit it. Right? It's called the right of return. So in this case, Bookkeeping Plus, APA, looked at that as that's deferred revenue. We received it last year. We knew the expenses were going to be this year. And we aren't going to say it's an earned revenue during our previous fiscal year because we might have to give it back. So Bookkeeping Plus and I were in agreement that, yes, this is deferred. This is like any other grant we've gotten. If they put a spending deadline on it, there's a reason for it, right? But this was a really wonky grant where all of a sudden they're like, it's in the biennium, and they're like, hey, it's January. Hey, guys, fill this facility plan thing out real quick, and we'll give you your money in March, and then just handed us a cash, right? And this whole thing has been a pain. It's a pain on our cash flow this year.
As I recall, the window to spend that was very narrow to start with. So
right. But
how much roughly do we think we may have to give back?
oh, we don't. This is where I'm getting to.
Oh.
So here's the challenge. So, see, Dave, you're very well trained in all of our grants. They gave us a window, we have to pay it back.
Yeah.
When SBOA, IDOE, State Board of Ed, some other legislative body looked at the grant or at the wording in the statute when they put this in the biennium budget, they left out parts. So they sent CLA, here's the statute that you have to go off of. And so basically now in this world, this is just a cash grant. They assumed that we were going to spend it when we received it, and there is no right of return statutorily, so it shouldn't have been marked as deferred revenue. But in all realms of accounting, and I'm sure Beth and Sandy can chime in on that too, it should have been based off of everything we've already had. So originally CLA said that that would be considered a material weakness, although to quote Kyla, it's not pervasive, so it's not actually a big deal, although it sounds like one. But because Bookkeeping Plus had been communicating with them early on, May, June, about, hi, this is something we need help figuring out how to record because we're not 1,000%, because again, I said it's wonky. CLA had said, the deferred, or we'll check into it. After all the checking into it and all the round, which is also what extended our audit season 2, they're gonna drop that down, most likely, if it has to go through another quality review, to a significant deficiency, which is down a level. We don't have to do a corrective action response. We don't really have to do much with it. We will give them, like, here, in the future, when the state just magically gives us cash, we will just record it. So what it actually does for us, from an audit standpoint, from our audited financials, it's actually in our favor, because then that helps the debt service ratio. It's actually income / revenue during last fiscal year. So now any other compliance issues or anything like that we could have had, just given the timing of, again, that weird go back a fiscal year to the bank giving us money the last day of a fiscal year, that basically puts everything right as rain. And so it's a weird finding, but it's definitely a one-off. There's not much to do with it. And that's pretty much it. So Gold Star audit, quote Kyla, she'll be here in March to give you the full presentation, of course. But yeah, so Kim's there, so good job to her on making sure everybody does what they're supposed to be doing, especially with credit card receipts. She sent me a harassing email this week, and I told her nope. So I'll be in trouble later, but
So
Work
question,
through.
so since they gave it to us and there's no right of return, does that mean it still has to stay for a particular
yes.
project? It doesn't get a transfer to anything? It still has to stay?
So, yes and no. It still has to stay in operating expenses, which is basically facility. There are still, our budget, our grant budget, we had to attach the state statute that qualifies for that expense. So if it was a facility renovation, and they at least had a list, I had to say it ties into this and this defends it. So what some of that is, right, where if you're looking at our cash flow and our expenses, this is a place where with that enrollment change, that can lower the expenses, because we're not going to have to spend that whole $520,000 this year, and can defer those, although that's probably a bad word right now, to the next year. Or we can say instead we want to use it on this. They also do not have apparently a grant amendment or modification process on this either. And so as long as it stays within the spirit of the statute, we're good. So yes and no, and all around.
I think you had us scared when you first started.
Yeah, see, it's fine.
And then I have another question. We've got the Early Childhood Administrators Cohort, and that's through IDOE and Indiana State University. Does that affect our charter? Is that like another type of charter thing with ISU, or okay?
No. So that is for the Launchpad, which is separate from our charter. And that is just so that Adam, myself, whoever gets pegged in that lottery, they're going to have ongoing professional development support, everything for the Launchpad.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's professional development for the staff and stuff?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So gets us through that. And then I will drop you down one more bullet point. Well, I got two more.
Done yet
Two more.
here, huh?
So Charter Innovation Grant. This is now the new pain in our side. We don't have our money yet. And we should have had it no later than January. And I followed up with State Board of Ed, because that's who actually oversees this disbursement. And I followed up with them going into around January 15th and did the, hey, I'm making sure I've been out. I've had diverticulitis, been out a little bit. I'm making sure I didn't miss an email with the voucher that I'm supposed to sign. And got, oh, they'll be coming out in January. I'm like, this is January. It's January 15th.
Halfway through the month.
Yeah, we're we're almost there. And then a week later, she emailed me back and said, hey, I know I told you that, but the state hasn't actually dispersed it to the State Board of Ed yet because they're doing a calculation adjustment because of how many kids are in charters, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we'll have more information soon. So soon has come and gone, and I do not have more information. So I've been doing the respectful wait, not to, completely be a persistent hound on it. But I will be emailing her again this week to follow up with that. I'm also going to email Scott Bess, who is on the State Board of Ed and a charter leader and the new Charter Association CEO, executive director, all that, and saying, hi, we really need our money. What's going on? Because that's money we've spent that is impacting cash.
Right,
making
yeah.
it tight, very, very tight right now. Title I finally got approved, so we can now start getting reimbursements for that again. Title II literally just got approved today. Title IV, I got a follow-up question today, so hopefully that will get approved, and then we can start asking for our money back. The title, federal grants, all of those departments have, I think they got their hand smacked quite a bit by the outgoing administration, and they really had to change some of the wording and some of the programs they're using. It's been a little odd, so I think we're almost through that.
Which outgoing, federal or state?
Federal.
Federal,
Yeah,
okay.
these are all federal, so that does add a challenge to it. And hopefully Title IV will get approved pretty quickly, and then we will definitely, Sandy and I have been working hard on, here's all the expenses, let's go.
Now,
So-
this would account for, because that was something I mentioned in my report, we had virtually no titles money coming in November, December. We had none budgeted for January. So that accounts for that. In other words, we're waiting, okay.
Yep,
And Title IV is not even 30,000, so that is not. But Title II money is bigger than it's been in the past,
Yeah.
at least on paper for us. So.
yeah, so it's up to 67, and we actually carried over pretty much the previous title grant, the Title II from last year, because we've been in that weird COVID spend, so we typically, when we get a 2-year grant, we spend it in year one because, we like to spend our money and always show people, hey, we're spending our money, so we do need more, right? We're not a corporation that sits on it because we have bills to pay, right? And a little different funding formula on that. So it's benefiting us this year that they'll be coming together, but next year, and especially this year as well, we're back on spend it when we get it.
forward.
Yeah.
Or that's the plan anyhow.
Yeah. I will say, obviously, I'm sure people have seen executive orders about grant funding and all of that, and pause, overturn, rescinded, with the caveat, right, like all those things, with the DEI, they're still auditing to check for DEI funding, all those things. My tiny concern with this, because I know I sent, executive committee got a, hey guys, this just came out and I'm not sure what's going on here. When we applied for our new round of federal funding, June/July, and Cassie Weaver's here for SPED director, we had to include a statement that talked about how we are providing an inclusive environment, those things. That was part of a Biden Department of Ed stipulation on that. And so the only tiny concern that I have is now every school that receives federal funding in the country had to put together some kind of statement attached to every grant about using it for inclusion, or how we address inclusivity. And so I don't think that that's actually going to come back to bite anybody. I will tell you that we don't use federal funding for DEI, whatever people are defining that as now or anything like that, right? We don't have a DEI department. We're APA, we're a place to belong. That's just it. And so if, depending on how deep this goes, and obviously this is a huge complexity that probably can't be solved in 20 years. If we had to remove that statement, that doesn't change any of our operations. If they come after the statement, it's, hi, here, we're teaching shark biology and going to Disney and funding like a math teacher and doing those programs. It's not anything that would set off any of those red flags that we've seen a lot in the news. So that's pretty much that on our federal funding. And then I do want to really highlight page 5 of the report.
I love
Oh,
page
yeah.
5.
Okay, that's
Page
good
5 is
news.
great.
Love it.
Yeah, so really beyond excited that we brought home our first sectional championship ever as a school. It was an incredible journey even through sectional weeks, and boy, do those girls like to make it close just for some entertainment value. I
Yes,
think
they do.
they owe me some blood pressure medicine and I don't know what else, right? But it has been amazing to see the success and see the girls get that. And just, we've been building this for 17 years. And so, old assistant coach thing, right? Actually, my dad was our first varsity coach, and I was his assistant coach. Learned very quickly we should not coach together. So, and then, my sister took over coaching and all that. So, from a personal family part, it's pretty cool to see that. But, yeah, this is pretty awesome for our school. So, I hope to bring that team here to a board meeting to show you some hardware, some net. They've got their regionals on Saturday in Southmont in Crawfordsville area. And we're playing Greenwood Christian. Currently ours, and your records don't matter because with tournament time, everything changes.
Yep.
But we're 17-9 and they are 7-17 or something of that
Yeah.
nature. But again, it's the big dance, right? It's the
It all
show.
depends on what
So
everybody brings to the court.
yeah, and I'm gonna say that the girls really didn't like watching another team cut their net down last
Oh,
season in their home gym,
No.
and so I think they've got that hunger. And our superpower is definitely scrappiness. So they definitely have made us proud as a school. They represent us really well, and it's been a long time coming. And so, page 5.
This season's been very interesting.
Yes.
Very interesting season to see how it plays out, because 1 minute they're on it and then, whoa, what just happened to that team? But
Yeah.
the last several games, these girls have been on it, and
Yeah.
of course, I'm pretty partial to the team.
She is. There's
That
a
little one
player on
right
the team.
there,
the little
that
one
looks
by the
similar to me.
yeah, and it's one of those things where it's one of those APA things that's kind of magic. Where on Friday night, our 2 big girls, the leading scorers, both got themselves into beautiful foul trouble. Like, I've never seen something so epically done
Yeah.
before, and our entire bench and all of our other players stepped up and carried us home. So, that followership, leadership, and people step up. Our kids step up when they need to. So, anyways, that is the conclusion of the oral addition to the CEO report. I normally don't go that deep, but with the audit, since literally we just did that, I don't know, an hour and a half ago, did want to make sure you were aware of that. And then once they get that finalized, I'll send you all of the numbers, and Dave can do the Magic Dave stuff, and we'll see Kyla in March. So,
I just have one little question regarding the wall damage. It
yes.
says there's significant wall damage. Where is it throughout, or is there one location? And how
It's in
significant
this
and
general
significant?
area. So significant just means there's a lot of patching that has to be done.
Okay.
A lot of damage with the paint from people using materials that maybe shouldn't have gone on walls. A lot of old screw holes, a lot of changes and all of that. We do have some damage, some water damage. We had it upstairs and that's almost finished. And then we have some at the elementary where roof leaks and things got under the plaster several years ago. We're finding that previous painters literally just painted on top of stuff, right? And so then you're finding hidden anchors just sticking out, or tape. I have found tape that is definitely older than I am. So that was some fun stuff. So in some cases, we're having to basically strip the wall all the way down to the actual plaster, which we were hoping to not have to do in most cases. But you know, anytime you do a house renovation, right?
You always come up
peel
with
back a
something.
layer, and you're like, whoa, there's 50 there. But
Yeah, I
But we're
saw
not-
that the hallways were completely empty, and I was like, where is everything?
yeah, yep, they're primed. So the main hallways, one of the challenges is the paint that we're using. So it is the epoxy. And so you can't, with all these basketball games that we have going on, all those things, can't actually paint that hallway. But it is primed. So we're getting there.
My brother came in this weekend from Maryland to come and participate with watching the game on Saturday. First time he's been in here since he left in middle school. And he made the comment that it does look very nice and a lot more inviting than what it was when we were here.
Hey, there's that. I did forget that shout out. We had our alumni night 2 weekends ago, which always an incredible thing. And we had people from 2012 to 2024. And
That's awesome.
whew, see, Angie has that look because our babies came home and they're all grown up and they have like grown children and they're so successful and it's amazing. But they're like, oh my gosh, this place looks so good. I'm so going, oh my gosh, I was so afraid you would notice that we have 2 different primers on this part on the wall. And so, you know, they don't take what we've had for granted. So anyway, there we go. There is a very long CEO report.
I did have one question.
One more question.
I'll make it longer.
Oh, okay, thanks.
No, I just on the head count, it looks like it kind of stabilized in January and February, more or less. Do you think that the factors that have influenced the drop have leveled off? I mean, do you think that and sort of you said you had the peaks and valleys? Do you think that that's the lowest that we'll see, or do you think we're headed for more?
I'm not sure. It just depends. And again, because of so many complexities to it, and you know, there are times, this is that time of the year where, you know, those hard academic conversations have been held, those behavioral conversations are being held, and that's where sometimes it's like, well, these are our standards, this is where we're at, and so sometimes this is the time of year families will kind of opt out. But I don't know. I wish I could say, yes, we're good, but
Yeah.
the fact that on Monday last week we were at 754 and Monday we were at 757, right? Like we're not sure.
Yeah.
So we're going to be doing a lot of proactive work on that, trying to get our messaging out some more. I will say one of the challenges, we had this last year and it did have a significant impact on us. Typically, we get to put our kindergarten roundup flyers in the Anderson City utility bills.
Oh, yeah.
And last year, they'd given us a date. We were good to go, right? Because we pester them. Angie pesters them for quite a while because we have to go print our own things and then give them all that. And then they just said, oh, hey, by the way, we have to send out a mandatory flyer or whatever, so you guys got bumped. And they let other schools continue, all that stuff. And a lot of back and forth this year, like, hey, are we going to get in? There was something about we have a stuffing issue, and we're like, we have a lot of people that will come stuff envelopes. I don't care how many you got. We even have machines. We'll come and do it. And they are not able to do any schools kindergarten roundup this year in the utility bills.
Oh, okay.
So
We're not
That's,
putting any second page in on anything.
yeah,
Okay.
It's just the utility bill.
yeah, so.
That
As much
sounds
as
like
they're,
somebody's complained about something versus just a technical challenge, maybe. I don't know.
yeah,
It's
I'm
hard
not
to say.
100% on that, but I'm gonna say as much as we're paying in extra demand charges throughout the year now, they can afford to fix whatever it was or
Mhm.
stuff
Well,
it.
yeah, yeah.
Not gonna soapbox on that, but it does put us in a challenge because that's the biggest way to find kindergarten students, not just us, ACS, everybody, right?
Yeah.
Last year we purchased mailers, like you could purchase certain zip codes, and we spent what we could afford. We sent to 46016 and 13 and 17, maybe somewhere in there. What's north?
11 and 12 are north, you didn't send those.
Yeah, we didn't send to those because we just couldn't afford that. But that's where we get a lot of people from too. And so we have to rethink how we get that message out. Stoddy, I'm sure when he presents about, when he comes to present, he'll tell you some of those, but we are also reformatting how we do the kindergarten roundup, where we're gonna have some more evening hour opportunities, and we're also gonna have a Saturday. And the goal is to do kind of a community event during that time period, and you know, hey, barbecue, let's go, to try to get that out there. We'll be using some other advertising avenues and whatnot, and they're also going to Head Start, those programs, which that's not fully new for us to go engage and send out flyers or drop things off. But, you know, we're gonna have to go door to door in some cases, and that's what we'll do.
Is there, because I know through the summer they have the farmer's market downtown. Is there opportunity to where we could do a younger activity, you know, showing what APA does, who we are, to the younger kids to build that excitement for us as well,
Yeah.
for that reason?
Yeah, I think that would be cool.
And it doesn't have to be like every Saturday, but
Right.
just, you know,
And there are, so like the Juneteenth celebration that gets held at 22nd Street, we're gonna have space there and
good.
all that, but we've also talked about having kind of an open house block party over here and
Well, that's a
saying,
great idea.
hey, you wanna do kindergarten roundup while you're here? You look little. Are you 5? Are you gonna be 5 by October 1st? Come
That's a
check
great
us out.
idea.
So, you know, well, but I like that. So, yes. We'll figure it out, but yeah.
We're brainstorming everything.
There we go. Thank you.
We were like, we can make bristlebox.
Yeah, they're much smarter
Yeah.
people than me in the room, all in that corner. So,
Good.
All right. Is there
Any
anything
other
else with that
questions?
CEO report?
for the longest CEO report in the history.
You're good, Jill. Thank you. Page 5 was awesome, though.
Yeah, definitely.
Gotta love page 5, that's my favorite.
Just a quick question. I know this is a concern across the state, not just here. I see it's a common increase since the beginning of the school year between 10th and 11th grade. It's a high increase of online students. Without going into serious detail, do you think it has to do with this current social climate? Because it's gradually gone up between 10th and 11th grade. It's almost nearly 50%.
I will say yes. Also financial climate. But yes, there are populations of students that are nervous about going in person. And I will just note that one of the interesting things that happened on our count day on Monday, we have one group of students particularly. There's about 42 that fall into this ethnic category in the high school, and 37 of them were absent on Monday because a rumor / joke was going around, because we don't do this, but other schools do send out, hey, make sure you're at school today. It's count day, on ADM count day, right? We want our kids to be at school because we love them. And I mean, obviously I understand, and I'm not trying to downgrade anything or degrade anybody on that. But because that messaging was going out, there were high school students where at like D26 where they started making a joke about, hey, they're gonna count and pick you up. And so we had 37 students choose not to come to school Monday because they weren't entirely sure.
Wow.
So I would say yes, George, I do believe that there are probably some social and societal impacts on the online increase. There are also, you know, transportation and financials and all that, not entirely there, but I'm not gonna, you know, gloss over that.
Of course, they got
completely.
counted, but as virtual.
No.
Or did some just not get counted?
So they get counted. One of the things, the attendance records matter, and it used to be basically, pardon the crass language on it, but butts in seats, right? Where schools were literally going around classroom to classroom and physically counting how many kids so that they could confirm that. Now with the count, yes, they're supposed to be here present on that count day, right? You can't guarantee 100% attendance on a count day. You can't guarantee 100% attendance on any day. And so if there are attendance records before count day and following count day, and there's an absence code entered in for that person, we've not had issues with them being excluded. If that is the case, I did talk to Jamie Garwood at Ball State yesterday, and just mentioned this as part of another conversation he was having with me. We have their blessing to fight it tooth and nail and support and assistance. So, but.
And Dave, Monday was a national not show up to work in school day for a certain demographic.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I saw it across the county. I knew this school,
And a protest day, I think, too.
Yeah.
My sister works at 160 absent
Yeah.
days.
Yeah.
So I knew this organization was gonna suffer. I just didn't know, Joe, if it was, I see the rise a lot. I didn't know if it had to do with our socioeconomic, what's going on, or if it had to do with just more kids becoming of age to work, that they just feel like they can go online.
Yeah, that's a lot of it, I think, too, yeah.
Well, and I will say, and I don't know if everybody's aware of this or not, they did just change Indiana's child labor laws. And so pretty much if they are 16 years old, they can work 40 hours a week. All the time limits are off it.
Oh, that's,
All of it.
I don't think that's good for academics.
I don't like that
No,
at
that
all.
is not great for academics, but it does support the new grad requirement initiative, and trying to get people through school faster is kind of what I'm interpreting this as. I'm not saying that's really great because it's already probably not great of society to say, hey, 18-year-olds, you're not going to have your brain fully developed for about another 8 years or so, but your adults go figure out what you want to do with your life and poof, right? So now, hey, 16-year-old, I need you to work 40 hours a week, but you also cannot have chronic absenteeism and you need to be at school. So it's going to be a very interesting next few years as these new grad requirements start to kick in and change.
I just want to add, I'm noticing a lot of people stating that their child has anxiety about coming to school. I've seen this more and more since COVID. And that's why a lot of these kids are staying home. They just cannot handle being in a
interesting.
classroom.
Yeah.
Being around a bunch of people.
Yeah, and that is part of that why we've been trying to do the mental health push and having the in-person clinics and those things. But yeah, there's a lot of social anxiety, a lot of fear for various reasons, and that's right. We're not going to soapbox. We're not going to commentate on all of it. Just know we're trying to support our kiddos however we can and make sure that they don't get left behind or lost. So
Having that ability to stay online or to be moved online and have that comfort and still have that support from a school system and be able to do some of the social activities, I think is very important. And I appreciate that with APA still offering online.
yeah, and I would say Zach Morrison has been doing a heck of a job with it.
Yes, yes.
Every year it gets better, and right now because of how much it's growing, especially with kind of the flexibility, these grad requirements and everything, we are probably going to have to start using some more in-person teachers as learning coaches again to help provide tutoring, support. We already have right now Cameron Moore, who is our high school history teacher and AP history teacher. 2 of his AP kids went virtual, and so he's still teaching that class for them and providing those supports. So best part about us, we just Semper Gumby on this, and we flex with what our kids need. So, but I do want to, since we're talking about virtual, Zach Morrison, phenomenal on that. So, all right. Any more questions? Sure. Okay, I think that concludes this presentation of the CEO report.
Call for the vote, call for the vote.
You
I
already
have a
voted, that was just
motion
the
and a
discussion.
second.
Yeah.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? All right. Moving on to the next, we have our financial report.
Okay.
So we will turn it over to Dave.
I think everyone has the handout sheet. I'll try to do a better job of walking us through this here than perhaps I usually do. Also, everybody does have an emailed copy and a copy of the my pre-meeting review. In the director's package, you have an email somewhere at home, and there's a lot of detail there that we will not try to go over here in our presentation. So let's begin. Starting at the top, you'll notice that we've got 5 columns. And, you know, it's been a little over 2 months since our last board meeting, so I think everybody's memory might be a little bit fuzzy on exactly where we stood at our November meeting, which was held the 1st or 2nd of December. So I'd like to start with the column that says original budget, which would be the 4th column. And as you can see, we have, of course, our total income less our total expense. And the original budget showed an ending cash balance of negative $513,692. Now, that cash net income, that doesn't mean one is broke. That might be the first thought when we see these large losses here. What that basically means is, on a cash basis, that the income was not sufficient to cover our expenses, so therefore we're not broke, but we would have to withdraw cash from our ending cash balance. Now, that is not a sustainable situation, because if you go to our first column where it says ending cash balance, our latest projection for this year's end, $352,064. So you can see a little bit of difference there. But the catch, though, is, as you will recall, we had the timing mismatch where with our facilities grant, which we just talked about at length earlier, we basically received about $520,000 in April of 2024. Yet we knew that we weren't going to be able to spend all of it, or at least most of it, until the next school or fiscal year. So that caused a bit of a timing mismatch. So when you work down that original budget column, you'll see that what we had to do last May, since the board is required to pass only a balanced or positive budget, we made use of the precedent that we are allowed with particularly Title I and probably some others too, to carry forward unspent amounts. And albeit most of the time that isn't usually $500,000, but it's the same principle. So, and some could call that deferred revenue on an accrual statement, but at any rate, what the board literally passed just to meet our requirements was a budget that was about $6,000, but was balanced. However, we are aware that on a 12-month pure cash basis, we are running quite a bit of a loss. Now, go down to the line where it says ADM count used. And you can see that when we started the budget year off, the budget was based on 830. But for funding purposes, in the early spring, our initial estimates were 850 students. So what that means is that the monies that we receive, state tuition for July, August, September, and maybe October, basically were a little bit higher than the 830. So, and then of course, as we know, the first ADM budget was 776. And then, of course, we just learned today that our second ADM was a little bit lower, and that will be, there will be some givebacks on that, and that will affect us in April, May, and June. We haven't tried to calculate that yet, but that probably is not going to sink the ship, let's say, but anyhow, we will have to give some more back. Now, let's see here. Okay, under ADM count used, let's see here. Basically, in terms of the loss in ADM funding, if you lose 54 kids, or really 74 for the first couple months, that was about $508,000 lost in ADM monthly support. And then we did lose about $76,000 on our innovation grant. And I noticed that in these numbers, we did lower our CTE grant. That went up last board meeting a little bit. But I know that's tied to our head count, ADM count, so I would throw that in and say our total loss from the lower ADM was about $569,000. Now, if we go back to our original budget and then the amended budget and our latest year-end projection, you'll say, well, wait a minute here. We lost about $596,000 from lower ADM, but here, actually, the difference between our original budget and the one that we passed as an amended budget at our last board meeting, the total loss to cash net income was only actually it's an improvement of 56, it's a little bit lower of a loss. In other words, we only lost 181,000. Well, okay, then you'll notice that I have a little section called improvements from amending budget. And without going into a lot of detail, if you want that, go back to my pre-meeting report in December. But when we did update or amend the budget, we did come up with cost savings of about $143,000 because we knew what our actual employment roster and expense dollars were. And of course, we don't know that with precision in May, so we did gain a bit from that. And we did have higher title monies, mostly because we're not intending to carry forward anything. If we got it, we earned it, we want to spend it. Although we have gained since last board meeting about another 50,000, so we're in good shape there. And then of course we did pick up our federally funded CSP grant, which covers our I call it our pre-K program there, covering about arbitrary, I think it's just the salary expenses, not total comp. So anyhow, that should kick in February to June according to our latest budget figures. So basically, looking at our projected cash net income loss, it's not as bad as it was last board meeting. We're down to 457, and we think now it's going to be around maybe 440,000, which doesn't have a real good ring to it. But then when we consider that the reason that it is so low is simply a timing mismatch between when we got a grant and when we spend it, and then if we add that back in, you can see that really we are, I think we can make a pretty good argument here that we're pretty much operating on a break-even situation. I suppose that's dependent or catches on what we do next year after, but anyhow. the numbers do look, I think, a little bit more economically realistic. Now, so that sort of catches us up on where we had been a month ago, or 2 months ago. Now, because of this little panic that we had last week with the question on grant freezes, etc., in the numbers here in my report, I have broken down our sources of income by state or federal. I just think this is something that we probably need to be aware of. Based on our latest projected year end, basic state support would be about 64%. Total grants would be about 24.7, and assuming I have everything classified correctly here on one of my pages, if I don't, please correct me on that, but that was the best I could figure out from the all of the various websites. Looks like about 12.7 is state funded and about 12% federally funded. Throw in around 6%.
That 6.3 is federal as well.
Yeah. Okay. The food services. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That one I didn't mark, but. Yeah, I think we knew that, or most of us knew that anyhow. So, again, 95% of our total support is coming in from either grants or state. And as I have been mentioning often here lately, in light of our cash balances not offering as much of a buffer as we've had in years past, I think you could make an argument that the only cash that we actually get to keep is our basic state support, and we may add about 60 to 70,000 in contributions. But the grants basically over a 2 or certainly a 3-year period is pretty much a wash. And once you wash those out, that's all we have left. So that's a challenge to us, because I think we're all wanting to elevate our ending cash balance this year. I think you, Beth, had mentioned earlier you thought 425 had a good ring to it, and we may meet that. So anyhow, let's see. Then we go down to a few other metrics I track. Our cumulative year-to-date debt service coverage ratio is 1.46. It's set at 1.25 times. Last year was rather paltry 0.47 times, but as Beth has explained to our bankers, the only reason was because we had the mismatch between the grant income and when we spend it. And so, again, that is certainly an explainable situation, because what the bankers are wanting to know is, are you solvent? Can you pay it back? They're not interested in the accounting technicalities, let's say. Sub-expense was a little high last year, 134. We're looking at about 96,000. And our net marketplace health insurance expense certainly was better than last year, at coming in about 305,000. So that's a big advantage to us. Now, looking ahead, that's another little box I put in here. Looking ahead to January through June. January is that's the month that we were hoping to get our improvement, because January is always a big month. Let's hope February will be a big month then. If we had received the $491,400 innovation grant in January and the $76,455 state safety grant, but no title money or very little from federal special ed, which we know why. We had those 3 months at drought. We would have shown a net cash income for January of $107,000, which isn't super great, but again, it's a positive month. So we will not probably have any contribution to our ending cash for the month of January, I'm suspecting. We'll have to see on that. And then February probably then will be a big month. Let's hope. We're bound to get it eventually, and when we get that, we will have probably our biggest month of the year. That, and then They originally were, last year they gave the first installment in July, but it was August, so maybe they're just running late this year. I don't know. But at any rate, the months from February to June show cash losses, which is not unusual. And the highest one was like 44,000, so they're not huge losses. And then we take a quick look at our monthly results. And again, for those, the detail is all in here for those that want to pursue that. But as you look across here, November, we had 2 months, November, December. We notice that unfortunately, we see no positive additions to our ending cash balance here. In November, let's see, and in both months we managed to extend a budgeted loss a little further, and you can see the comparisons there on the variance and the details in my report if you want to know why. Basically, what it amounts to is that our grant income was way off, mostly the titles, and federal pretty much was steady, but we weren't getting much there anyhow. So and our expenses more often than not come in below budget in total. So when we have those big losses, it's usually because our income reimbursements didn't show up when we thought they would. So, and then of course you mentioned building improvements and facilities grants. Those numbers, not much activity in those 2 months, maybe because we've got some things on hold. I'm thinking that's it.
Yes.
And then of course I showed how the total grants were well below what we had budgeted for. So that's about all I have. Hopefully that brings everybody back up to date here and sort of gives us an idea of where we think we'll be at the year end. So any questions or comments or any Bookkeeping Plus, did anything I got wrong or anything else we need to present? Or
No, I think you did a great job on that.
Okay.
Yeah, like you said, a lot of times it's just the income that we're waiting on coming through. It's
Yeah.
not that we're overspending necessarily against our budget.
That's why we don't spend much time anymore going through that monthly budget and actual, because it's almost pointless in a way.
Yeah.
What we want to know is, are we going to get it? Now, if we find, well, we're not going to get it anytime, that is a problem.
Yeah, we're going to get it. I'm not worried about that.
Yeah. What do you feel would be a good ending cash for us? Do you still think we could hit 425?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. That's going to be tight, especially now with the ADM going down another 22.
Yeah, that won't help.
I do think we're going to have to look at that. So I mean, that's going to be an impact by all means.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll have to reevaluate and look there, see where we are.
Let's see, am I correct? The CSP grant is federally funded, even though I think the state is involved in administrating about all of them.
Yeah, CSP, it's the same as like the other federals we get, like title and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
Sandy and I got to sit on a riveting meeting yesterday for their first introduction on how they're doing this grant. And the question was asked, is this going to possibly be impacted by anything going on Fed? And they said, no, we already have the money. Which for me, then can you give us an advance on it, since we have to spend the money to all that? So I'm sure that's a no. But yeah, it shouldn't be impacted by anything with that. So.
That is one thing with these, with the federal, they were talking about shutting some of that off. If they're already funded by the federal government, then it is a safe that you will get your money.
Yeah, because we are contractually obligated.
Right.
The one thing right now, CSP is they're in the contract period. There's 22 schools that received this grant, and they completed one contract so far. We're not it, by the way. So they're working through it.
Okay. Oh, I forgot to apologize to our viewing audience. The hat is usually not part of my treasurer's report, although I have got a few compliments about it from some of our younger audience. But anyhow, I've got some medicine on my head that napalmed it, so it was either wear a hat or not show up. So I did want to apologize for that. I didn't want them to think the board had totally dropped its dress code or anything like that, so.
It's the casual look today.
Casual, yeah,
It
casual
was a
board.
Spirit Week,
so,
it's Spirit Week because
There
of
you go.
sectional championship. You were just participating.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
You got an APA hat, I'll switch with you here, as long as I don't have to pay for it.
Say, that's fine. We'll take it out of your salary.
Okay. That's all I have.
A quick question regarding the substitute expense. Is that what, we have full-time subs, is that right?
We have one full-time sub, and other than that, it's all of our regular subs. We do have a few long-term subs right now, maternity leaves,
Okay.
and then obviously the elementary scenario.
You added one to G&A, I noticed, but for about 2,000.
The what?
You had one sub allocated to G&A expense, which I don't think we've ever had before.
Oh, where
But
did
to the
she
tune
get
of
that?
about 2,000, so apparently we have made a provision
Oh.
for some subs.
That is actually, so typically we don't have that, but that has been coding because of substitutes for Mrs. Armstrong or Tiffany.
Oh, okay, yeah, well, if they're not here, I suppose somebody has to do it, so yeah, no
Yes.
problem there.
Everybody takes their turn covering lunches for them, but yeah, for the whole day, it's a happening place at both of those buildings.
All right, so I need to have a motion for the treasurer's report.
I'll make a motion that we pass the detailed treasurer's report.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those not? All right.
I think.
Hopefully that wasn't too lengthy, was it?
Not compared to that CEO report.
Well, yeah, I will grant you that, but
So we don't have any old business,
Oh, man.
and so now we are, oh,
Bye.
oh, bye,
Oh, see
thank
you
I thought you
guys.
said hi. I was like,
I did too, I was like, wait.
Hello.
All right, so we are on to new business for our APA Spotlight. We have special services. So we will turn the floor over to you.
All right, so today, as part of our special services, we have Jenny Pruitt representing our ELL. We have Cassie Weaver, who is SPED, and then we have Jessica Hornacher for High Ability. So
Yay.
they all three run our K-12 programs in those areas, and they're here to share brilliant knowledge and show you why the smart people are over there.
Ryan has joined us on the phone as well, so he is listening to everything.
hi, Ryan.
Alright. Alright, so I'm Cassandra Weaver. I am the new special education director. I was at APA 3 years ago. I was started as a para, was a behavioral interventionist. Then I have a degree in applied behavioral analysis. I have a transition to teach to special education, and then I went to the University of Indianapolis to get my master's of special education administration and leadership. So I was at Cowan before coming back to APA as special education director. My husband, he also works at APA. He's one of our CAP instructors. He's recently gotten out of the Air Force, August this last year. So it's very new to us, not being military members and all the aspects that come with that. We have 2 kids, Emma, who is 10, and Jameson, who is 7. I love special education and I can't imagine myself doing anything different.
And she is one of those amazing weirdos who loves to read the law
Yeah.
and research and do all this stuff to make sure we are beyond compliance. So,
Yes.
rock star there. Thanks. And welcome back. I mean, obviously I've said it a lot, but
Yeah, you're good.
officially.
So I'm just gonna dive right into some data stuff. So Indiana changed the way that they are monitoring special education. It used to be that schools were on a 3-year cycle. The IDOE realized that they were not able to maintain compliance to the IDEA well enough on a 3-year rotation. So they moved to a 2-year rotation model. So this year, our rotation was only looking at our evaluation data and child find. So we were found 100% on this year's poll. Next year, we'll have a full review. So that will look at how well we are writing our goals in our IEPs, how well we are coming up with our present level information, and how well we are preparing them for life after high school. So we'll have the full, so the IEPs we are writing right now, we are reviewing and going through with a fine tooth comb to make sure that when we get our grade, we come out with no findings. So our current special education count is 171 students. For Part B grant for this school year, we reported 176. So we had a slight dip. Actually, in the last couple of weeks, we've lost a few kids. Last year's was 188, and the year prior to was 178. So we got little valleys, like CEO Barker mentioned. So in the process right now, we have completed 13 initial evaluations this school year with our school psychologist. 9 of those evaluations were found eligible. We currently have 7 initial IEPs, so these are kids who have never had an IEP for that are being evaluated, so 7 are going in the process. And then we have 7 who have consents out to parents that we're waiting on those consents to be returned. Those initial evaluations are ranging from emotional disabilities, language impairments, speech impairments, as well as specific learning disabilities. We also did some reevaluations this school year to look at kids who needed occupational therapy, but also kids who were not under the appropriate labels. There were some kids who were labeled as other health impairment, where an emotional disability fit them better, or reclassifying some of our kids for autism spectrum disorder for the educational setting where they had a different diagnosis and under Article 7 previously. So some where there's reclassifications and they're getting related services. Some of the big changes that we've done this school year is Captain Sotomayor and I went to a statewide special education conference in the fall. And once we came back from that conference, we kind of revamped our special education program in the elementary. So previously it was divided out to academics on this side of the building and behavioral support for special ed was over here. We have merged those two back together. All special education services and related services are actually housed out in the modular. And due to the increase in cognitive disability, intellectual disabilities, we had created a self-contained classroom in one side of the modular. So that is a co-taught classroom with one of our special education teachers and one of our paraprofessionals. So we have a couple kids who are in that classroom setting for at least half of their day, and then they transition out to their peers with additional academic support as well. I will say we have seen an increase this school year in intellectual disabilities. A lot of kids moving from ACS into our school, wanting that smaller environment, wanting to be able to create those more positive relationships and closer relationships with teachers. So we have that in
Why
place.
did you, let's see, I guess what motivated merging these two back together?
Well, so typically they are merged together. It's not treated as two separate entities
Right.
because the IEP is a holistic approach. So kind of putting it back to how the approach should be looked
Should,
at.
okay.
Yeah.
So you think it's better to do it that way than maybe it had been previously?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
okay.
Yeah, so
Oh.
merged it back together.
Uh-huh.
From the merging it back together and creating our self-contained half-day program, the teachers have commented on a lot of positives. They're able to focus on the kids in their classroom a little bit more. It's helped manage their classroom a little bit more, and it's allowing the kids who are pulling out to get more support for their direct needs and meeting them where they are. And then when they get back into the classroom, for some of them, that's when their teachers are having their like independent rotations and everything. So then she gets to pull those kids up to her table and work with them a little bit more closer while not having to juggle everyone at the same time.
Mm.
And because of this, we've also Jessica's had to create additional grade books and stuff like that, because even though these kids are in our part-time self-contained setting, we are working towards their academic success and having their grades so the parents can know what they truly are doing in that classroom. So feeding off, something new this school year is our occupational therapist, Vicki Bowman. She's on the far. The occupational therapy has been a contracted position previously. It's been contracted through Kids Count. This year, Kids Count could not provide us an occupational therapist in both levels. So we looked out, we found Vicki Bowman. She came with a lot of experience in multiple states, but also inner city Indianapolis. So she understands our population of students, low poverty. She is great. She is assisting as our lead related service provider to ensure that we are working towards Medicaid billing, which was a struggle last year, and I'll go over that in a second. So it's amazing having her in the APA family, not as a contracted employment, but someone she's checking with teachers, that's creating a more natural relationship between her and the teachers. Holly Kennan is our speech pathologist. She's from Kids Count. We have her 4 days a week. So she does speech and language impairments. So our Medicaid billing data. So we have worked a lot on scheduling PDs with our company that we do Medicaid billing for, setting timelines, ensuring that they're getting all their Medicaid billing because they're able to bill for a portion of their services and we get that funding back. So last year's OT billed 33. That's all she billed was 33 for the whole entire school year. So far this school year, Vicki has done 145 Medicaid billing reports. Last year, our Holly was also our SLP. She did not bill at all. And this year she has done 115 billing reports. And this just goes to not knowing when their billing was due. Because different billing companies operate on different ways. Like Claim Aid is a quarterly bill. That's what I used at Cowan, and you have to the entire end of the quarter to do your billing. We are contracted with PCG. They are a monthly billing. Your billing is due the 6th of every month.
These are only for sped students, correct?
Yes. Well, for currently, there was proposed legislation that did pass about opening it up to 504 students and health plans as well. We don't have anyone with those services on those types of plans at this time, but that is something that we can bill for.
So does this mean then that we lost the opportunity to get reimbursed for some of the Medicaid costs?
Yes, last year, yes.
Which is, yeah, not good, but I understand how that could easily happen, so.
Yes, yeah, and Jill and I, we did some looking around at other vendors as well to make sure you're getting the most bang for our buck essentially. We listened to a Zoom call. That was their minimum fee was $10,000 right off the bat. but last year we only made $10,000 in Medicaid billing, so
Yeah.
Sad there wasn't a really great cost benefit analysis there.
yes. PCG has the lowest percentage rate that they take off of our billing. So they're at an 8%, claim aid is a 10%, and then I think Go Solutions was the one that we looked at, that was the minimum $10,000 flat out fee.
Are you billing Medicaid as individual students, the reports and stuff?
Yes.
Do you verify if they are currently in a program already before you bill?
So that is PCG's job. So
Okay.
PCG takes that entire process away. They will tell me what students are Medicaid eligible, and then it'll send me an alert of you need to contact its parent to get consent. So then I just print the form, get it to the parent, parent signs it, I upload it back into the system, and then I just go in and if they have speech or OT services, depending on, or if they have both, I have to generate a referral.
Mhm.
The school psychologist has to sign it off, and then they're good to go billing once that referral is put into the system. So they do all the back end work for us, which it makes it really nice.
So and then I ask because that's my world actually.
Okay.
That is part of my job. Because if they are in a program outside, then Medicaid will not authorize additional services. That's why I ask. So
Okay.
that's where, but if they're doing that on the back end for you, then that's great because that's something you don't want to get into.
Yes, because they, even this last week, there was a kid who was already in our system that was not Medicaid eligible, that then they just sent me the alert that I now need to start the whole process for that student. So that makes it really nice because the other programs make you pay or you have to do the back end on top of their fee. This is my last slide. So this is staff training. So trying to make sure that all staff are understanding of what we are doing. So we've been keeping track of some staff trainings. So starting at the top, manifestation training. So our TORs and building administrators went through a manifestation training. Manifestation is when a student with an IEP or a 504 gets to 10 days of OSS. That is considered a change of placement. When you get to that, you have to look at, were the behaviors a direct result of the student's disability? And if so, we have to come up for a plan for that student. If not, then your principal can take whatever action they deem necessary for that student. So just making sure everyone understands what the law requirements is, and then also having our TORs learn the process that we are setting up in place. Or if a parent were to make a complaint to IDOE, our process is 3 days OSS, we call a case conference committee. We work on revising their IEPs. What can we do to help stop this behavior? We call a committee again at 5 days. We do the same thing. What else can we do? We go at 7 days. And then when we get to day 10, then we can show IDOE, if we have a report, we did what we needed to try to stop these behaviors. So just best practice. I've learned that for my case. Try to revise, and you're covered. Another training that all SSC staff did was executive functioning, so how to teach kids organization, time management, task initiation, I can't say that right now. Those really important skills that aren't necessarily taught in the classroom, but making sure we're reinforcing those in with our students who need that a little bit extra than maybe a general education student does who gets it right away. Discrete trial training. This was completed by the elementary special ed staff. So this is a behavioral approach to learning. It's about trying to do errorless learning. So completing that, it's for kids who really struggle with acquiring the skills. It's really good with them. It's especially good for kids who are struggling with the alphabet. You can find a lot of growth using discrete trial training for them. At the beginning of the year, we outlined the legal requirements that the general education teachers have upon them to implement IEPs, to come to case conferences. What happens if a parent says, I want my kid evaluated? The timeline starts there. If you were at Payless and you come approach me as a teacher and you say, I want my kid evaluated, even though I'm not at work, that starts the official 10-day timeline. And that has been utilized by 3 teachers at the elementary. They're like, I got this message at like 9 p.m. or I saw this parent at a game. So definitely appreciate that they listened and we were using this information. Assistive technology, this went to all staff because we went to Chromebooks. That is a great thing for our special education students. Chromebook have so many built-in assistive technology tools, whereas if we were still using Lenovo's or anything like that, the IT department would have to be downloading Chrome extensions and they would only work in Chrome. But with the assistive technology and the Chromebooks, they can do text-to-speech, they can change the color of their screen, they can have highlighters on the screen. There's so many things at the tip of all of our kids' hands that they can implement on their own without teacher support. Another training we did was opposite defiant disorder. This was for our 29th Street building staff. We have a lot of students with ODD, and it's all about how we approach them. Giving the choice, but allowing the same outcome. And it's really about not entering power struggles. So how can we not lose our power, but we don't start an argument with a kid that's really unnecessary? So those are some of our trainings. I will say that Commandant Barker and I did work on a state-funded grant. We proposed a $100,000 grant for behavioral support, intervention, BCBAs, things like that, to come in to work with teachers throughout the school year. I believe we were projecting 2 times a week that someone would come in, they can meet with a teacher who's struggling with the kids, observe, get their hands on, help them, help make materials. We will find out in March if we are a recipient of what we wrote or if they amended those grants. Nancy Holzapfel just said, write it however big you want and we'll tell you what you get. So those will be told in
We
March.
went as far as we possibly could.
Yeah, so we find out in March, and if we get it, the first day that you can expense that grant is July of this coming summer, and it has to be fully expensed by June 2026. So it's just like a 1-year grant for us to use to provide additional support. And it was solely a behavior grant.
So you were talking about that you've got so many there that are in this step, so you get people that will be in the middle of the school year and then they're like, I want my kid evaluated or whatever, so oftentimes it is not at the beginning of the school year.
Yes, yeah, and it really fluctuates on what the classrooms are doing as well. So right now, what I'm working through a lot of are, Captain Sotomayor had the dyslexia screeners, and that had from a certain date that you had to have them put out to parents. So parents have gotten those dyslexia screener letters, and as they're looking at it and they're noticing their students are getting flagged as at risk, those evaluation requests are coming in because of the requirements of the IDOE. He has to state in there, you can contact your special education director for an evaluation for a specific learning disability because that's what dyslexia falls under. So some of those parents are requesting testing, and then it is, I have 10 days to determine, are we going to go forward with testing or not? So trying to do a deeper dive of where the student is at. Is it just because it was on that day at that time, we weren't feeling good, or is this a true deficit that we need to look at?
And this is for students that are on IEPs or 504s and all of those, or
All of the above.
all of the above?
Yeah,
Students, wasn't it?
so we have to screen all students for dyslexia, especially in the elementary, and also if we have any suspicion of it. as they get older. And some of the meeting that we had this week talking about that, where the dyslexia screener from the state, one of the ones that we're supposed to use is a computer-based program. So if they got bored, if they clicked something or tried to click through so fast, or they really are struggling that way, there's a little bit of a discrepancy in the results. And so that's one of the things that's amazing on Cassie's resume, right, is that she is certified to do those academic tests to evaluate, was this a fluke or is this a pattern? And then we look at the rest of the data points that we have as well. And so that's part of what she's doing right now is, okay, they've said this, if they're doing fine on the paper-based version, that's something where we're like, okay, well, and the rest of their data adds up, then no, they don't need to go with this, or no, there is something. And then we also, I posited an idea here about, could there be a discrepancy between the computer-based reading and how, looking at the screens, because we know in dyslexia education, sometimes just changing the color of a paper changes their entire interpretation of the reading and the letters, and they stay where they're supposed to. So could there be a discrepancy here, and then that opens a whole new rabbit hole. So she's really great at that, and I just get to say, hey, I wonder, and then step back and watch her be amazing. So.
Cassie, I appreciate everything. It's very informative. Well, no, it's good because it's a topic that we usually don't hear about. But I do have a question.
Yeah.
And this might be something that we have to speak about after a board meeting. My question, though, pertains to like medical billing. Because when these therapists, whether they're contracted, or in this case now they're not contracted, right? They're getting.
Well,
one
one's
is.
in-house
One
and
is
one's contracted.
Yes, but in order for these therapists or providers to be paid, they have to be medically billed in a proper manner. In this case, I'll give an anonymous example. I had an individual who enlisted in the military. They were told, hey, speak to someone at school for the issues that you want to talk about. Mom and dad, you can only discuss so much with us. Long story short, this individual was diagnosed by a school therapist because of medical billing of, say, social anxiety.
That's so great for the military.
Correct. It took us 2 months, and the family's primary care physician, PCP, and parents were not aware that this kid had been informally or formally diagnosed with social anxiety. Is there a way that they can be a general counseling coding?
So these are separate. These are actual occupational therapists. So thinking about like dexterity and those things,
Okay.
and then speech pathologists, speech therapy.
Okay.
We do have our mental health, but that is through Meridian and Aspire.
Okay.
So they are through actual medical providers. We do not are on-site therapists. So we do have licensed mental health worker as our school counselor for the elementary. She is not doing any billing or identification in that manner. But
That tells me this is a discussion for something else, but thank you for
Yeah.
Oh.
So we are actually only contracted with PCG to bill for speech and
Okay.
occupational therapy. There are other things that schools can bill for, but we, at this current time, don't have any students who would meet the school-based codes to
Okay.
use. Even, like, you could even bill for nursing, but we don't have any students who meet the criteria to bill for school-based nursing.
Okay, I guess what threw me off was the ODD.
Oh,
yes.
Yeah.
That if they have an ODD, then that's actually already like IEP processes, and that went through school psychologist testing and all of that big stuff.
yeah, we're not diagnosing any of these students with an actual medical disability. Even the autism one, these are educational based. So I'll explain to parents, like, you can have an educational diagnosis of autism and get an educational IEP for autism. That doesn't mean you have a medical diagnosis of autism. It's just saying we are seeing autism tendencies during your academic school day. Educational autism actually looks very different than general autism that you would get in a medical diagnosis. And that's hard for some families because they will bring in their medical diagnosis and be like, but my kid has autism. But then I'm saying, but when we look at IDEA and Article 7, your child is not displaying the educational autism tendencies. I'm not invalidating your medical diagnosis, but they are two separate realms.
Thank you.
How many autistic children do we have? Maybe as a percent of the totals you gave us earlier? Is it a prevalent problem?
16, I believe, students identified as autism.
Within the different realm of the spectrum.
Yes.
And we have many more that are neurodivergent, ADHD, in that arena as well, which the more we are learning about the two, the more that we are seeing that maybe they're kind of all related.
We have, we have 15.
15.
So,
Do we have any students that are home instructed at this point, that are homebound, let's say?
We have one student who is on homebound and will be returning in the next 3 weeks.
Oh, okay, so not too many, that's good, yeah.
and part of that, I think, because of the virtual program, because we do have kids with IEPs that are in our virtual program.
Oh, okay.
And so I guess it's a loophole on their own part of avoiding possible homebound or self-selecting in that arena. So does have more flexibility.
Last question, I always ask this every year. I ask, I don't think we've tried to quantify how much we get paid for, receive for special ed versus our cost. I did run the numbers, at least that seem to be on the page somewhere, and it did look like that actually we were covering, wasn't a big margin, but it looked like we were covering most of our cost. I don't recall the exact dollar figures, but do you guys think that that's valid? I'm sure there's a lot of costs that never show up anywhere.
Yeah, so for the most part, we're going to be fairly balanced in there. However, there are a lot of things that we just code to our general fund versus putting it to the state sped or the Part B, like the federal funding. So at the end of the day, we're probably a little underfunded in that area, and especially with a lot of the
There wasn't a big margin. I think, well, the state's about 600-some thousand, and then the federal special ed is for the special situations. And I think it looked pretty close, but I just was curious about that.
Yeah, and a lot of that with like the supplies and things that we purchase, they don't end up in that arena. We do have to submit a MOE, maintenance of effort, so it does show like, are we spending the money they gave us to like whatever ratio of kids we have. And so we do meet that requirement. So we're definitely spending that, but yeah, looking at our cash flow, it looked pretty even or a little bit there.
That's good.
Don't worry, Jenny's gonna tell you, she more than makes
Well, I
up
was
for
going to
that
ask Jenny the
deficit.
same question, and I don't see where we're covering her program.
Oh, no, we're
She can
not.
enlighten us on that.
I say the state funding we get for that is, it covers about one of the people in that program.
About 35, I think, yeah.
All right, next, Jenny Pruitt.
Okay,
I don't have a fancy PowerPoint.
that's all right.
So I know board is familiar with Jenny, but just for our home audience, Jenny is our director of ELL. She has been with us for quite a while, previously with ELIC and Migrant Education, and she runs a small but mighty department and spends a lot of time tracking down kiddos and trying to get them to where they need to be on language development. So.
So you notice that at the top I've renamed it because in the last year and a half, our acronyms changed, like ESL, ENL, Now we're multilingual learners, and that is, they've said that that's because we don't give our ELLs, English language learners, enough credit. they actually know 2 languages. They're not just learning English, but they have Spanish or whatever other language. So the first section is the demographics. We, looking at the count, we have 142 Hispanic students, and that is 19% of our student population. We have 2 foreign exchange students, one from Italy and, well, one Italian, one German. They each speak, our Italian girl speaks 4 languages, and our German student speaks 3. So, I mean, I think in Europe, they tend to do that.
Yes, they do.
Are they both being invited into the National Honor Society?
Yeah, I saw that. I did. I was very impressed with that. So of our Hispanic students, we have 111 of those are language minority, meaning at one point they were still WIDA testing and getting levels according to that, and some have tested out. So that's 78% of our Hispanic students. And our multilingual learners, right now we have 82. We started beginning of the year, we had 89, 88, 87, we stayed at 87 for quite a while, and then we just lost some, but we're actually at 83 because we just got a new virtual student this week. She came after my report. And that is 74% of our language minority students that are actually in my program. That's a lot. Because moving on down, when I started, we had 41 students. And each year it's grown a little bit, but this year we just kind of exploded. They're coming out of like Holy Cross, we're getting transfers from Anderson. I think, again, it's the smaller classroom sizes that are pulling them over. This number fluctuates throughout the year, just because I think that sometimes these kids move back and forth between Anderson and here. They'll go, they'll come, they'll go, you know, then they're back, and we keep telling them that this is the better place to be. We're part of the Title III consortium. We receive a Title III grant, but it's through our money goes to the consortium. There are 124 schools in the consortium, so that money, all the money that we get is divided, and we are actually in one of the groups, the top tier, that we have some of the most students. So I think our Title III monies this year were like $7,300, but going in with the lump sum, we get $1,000 that we can spend on materials and such, and $500 for our family engagement, which is helpful because the state does not give a lot to our program for supplemental services. It has increased since it went to the monthly payment. We do get more per student. So our consortium is in Lafayette. They provide, like I said, they provide professional developments. That's where they have a lot of professional developments for teachers, for administrators, for staff, and those are free for us. They provide it free for us. We just have to get there, or a lot of them are virtual anymore. And then they also we can get like software licenses, our family engagement funds, professional development, all of that comes through our consortium. Okay, mine's gonna be quick. So the next page, the teacher of record. They started requiring us in 22 to have a teacher of record for our EL students. So we do have Wendy South here at the high school, Pre-Academy Academy. She's our TOR for our students here. And Sam Sorrell is the TOR for the elementary. They have certain responsibilities that go along with that title, and then they do receive a stipend for their additional responsibilities. Our ML students are currently in the process of taking the WIDA assessment. It's yearly. The window opens January 13th and closes February 28th. We would have been finished last week, but with the situation, should be finishing up this week. We do have some virtual students that we can't seem to get it. The WIDA is 100% participation, and we've never not made that, but we do have some that we may have to go out and say, okay, we've sent all of these notices, we need to get you in here to What the WIDA does, it lets us know, it tests their academic and social proficiency in English. It's a very academic test, I will say that. It's not my favorite. So all the ones that this is my 25th year working with English language learners. I did the migrant program for 19 years, and then I came here, the migrant program in Alexandria. It's very, the kids, you'll see later on my chart, we just can't seem to get them all, we get stuck in the level 3 because it's to go on up, you know, it's just hard for them to get a level. They have to have a level 5 to test out.
Yeah, can I interject you here?
You sure can.
Thanks. I mean, I kind of interjected already. Anyway. And part of the challenge I think that we see with WIDA, whether your reading level is proficient in your native language or English, that is part of what is impacting their test scores. And so when she says like the academic part, if it is using unfamiliar vocabulary, no matter if it would be in their home language or this language, it's asking them more complex things and actually just saying, can they read, speak English, and all of that? Because obviously we know the English language is very nuanced. We've borrowed and pieced together from multiple languages. And so it's not really that easy to learn. Orange could mean a million things in English. And Spanish, orange is orange, orange color is another word. And so that is some of those challenges because of that language. I don't want to say barrier because it's just really hard to say that part. And then if you're asking them a deep comprehension question, well, you're not asking them if they understand the words on the page. You're asking them, can you understand the theme of a paragraph or something to that nature? So that's kind of where she means on that academic.
Well, and to that, our kids, like, they kind of check out sometimes, some of our older kids, because this is all going in English, and even though they speak English fluently, that academic language just stops them, and then they check out. So you have to really, that's why we have Ben Murray, he's a instructional para here for the EL program at the high school, and he does a great job because he's working both academy and pre-academy, and that's like 40 some kids. Then we have an instructional assistant working with the elementary students, and she has a full schedule all day. She sees all levels of all grades of the students. But it's like the English language development is hard for them, especially when we get students coming in who don't have any literacy in their home language. It's easier to learn, believe it or not, it's easier to learn English if you have literacy based in your own language first. Because they know the mechanics and everything. Coming in with nothing, they're learning the ABCs, they're learning all that, but they're learning in English where they speak Spanish.
Are you seeing a lot of that? A lot of kids like that?
We're having more, yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's tough.
Now, I will brag a little bit. We had 2 non-English speakers come in the spring, speaking no English. Well, our 7th grader actually in his ELA class, there were like 90 kids tested, and he was the only one that got 100%. And he's a level 1. His sister's doing just as well. So, you know, just with the support that we can give them and giving the teachers the tools to shelter the lessons and how to accommodate for those language development issues, they are making progress. I'm seeing a lot of progress this year. On down to the individual learning plan, it's an IOP, and each student gets that, and it's based on WIDA scores, it's based on any of their test scores plus their WIDA score. And you go through and give it the same thing for, as an IEP, you go through and give them accommodations, you give them a certain amount of time that they get extra instruction, and it carries the same weight as an IEP. It's a legal document, and it's like you have to provide those according to the Lowthers Nichols lawsuit or civil suit. So we have, and then when we do our grant at the beginning, we have to do an ELL plan or ML plan now and outline what kind of programs we're going to be providing for our students to get approved. Those are content-based English language development and SIOP. Okay, so if we go to the next page, these were our RETA scores for 2024. And as I said previously, that we're testing for that now. We won't get the scores back until late April or early May. Basically because 48 states take this test and they have to score two reading and writing are on the computer. And even though the older ones are speaking, or reading and listening are the ones that give them their level, their tier. And then they go on to do writing and speaking, and those have to be scored, by someone, because you have to be able to read what they've written and listen to what they've said. Looking at this chart, you can see that our biggest percentage, it's 42.9%, are level 3s. Level 1, we have 15%, level 2, almost 18%. We only had 2 tests out last year, and that's common. I mean, it's rare to get kids to get a level 5, especially with our size of population. The state is lowering it to 4.3. They can test out with that, but they have to have the grades. They have to do well on NWA. They have to do well on the other testing, and a lot of our students are not there. Why can't back up exiting out of program at 4.3 whenever they're not, fulfilling their grades or their test scores. Okay, and then on the back are our 2 ML plans that we have for a grant. One of them is the SIOP, it's the Sheltered Instruction Observation Protocol Model. And basically it helps the teachers implement and assist the multilingual students in their classrooms. It helps them develop the academic English language that's needed for them to be successful. The other one is the content-based English language development. That is a little more in-depth. It's the students learn the subject by using the language as learning rather than their native language. So that is where that tool develops their knowledge so the student can develop their linguistic ability in the target languages. Teaching to the content is kind of where we focus on, because we have a lot of my teachers will ask, how can we help this student? And because as they get in the upper grades, basically they need to focus or let the student focus on what do you need out of this big passage. They're going to look at this big passage they're reading, and they're going to say, okay, I don't know what I'm supposed to get out of this. So if the teacher will focus in on what they want the student to get out of that. What are you teaching? What's your main goal here? What do you have? What's the gist? And that's what we need to provide to our language learners, because they get overwhelmed with reading a passage and then they're just like, okay, I have no idea. There's so much to read. I don't get it. I don't understand it. So this content-based language development is important to meeting their needs where they're at. And on my wins, I'd say that it's continued to grow over the past few years, and I feel like that's something we're doing here, because families are coming in, and then they tell family members that, this is a good place to be, they're getting the services, they're seeing improvement. I will say I'm excited for IRE this year because we have 5 third graders taking it, and I'm almost positive 3 of them are going to pass. So they're really, really high. Second graders, but one thing I will add to that, they have come out with, you could get a waiver for them to not have to take it again. But we are no longer allowed to do that if the student has had 2 years of services. But we have like a first grader right now, she still does not speak English. She came in as kindergarten. So this will count as her 2 years, even though she's not making any progress with her English language. So, that's what we're up against when they get to third, we can't get good cause exemptions because they've already had those 2 years of services. So we just have to really hone in on our students who need that extra support, and hope for the best. So,
Well, thank you, ma'am.
you're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So, last but certainly not least, Jessica Hornacher obviously has been with us for quite a bit. She is high ability K through 12 as well as her elementary director of academics. Has put a lot of work into our high ability programming for the last few years as part of a consortium and all of those fun words, and really cool tool that she's handing you the paper version of. Online version is super awesome as well. So looking forward to that, and there you go.
All right,
Thank you.
so what you're getting handed has been like, I participated in a class 2 years ago that the state let us take an extra high ability course with one of the gurus from Ball State, and she guided us through some quick hits and some long-term goals, and this was one of our longer-term goals. It was, but I wanted it to be done last year, but I got pulled into the classroom, I think as you know, last year, second semester, so it did slow this down. But what I gave you is the paper, but the digital is much more fun because it is completely interactive for our teachers. But this is just our guidebook based on the requirements. Every year we fill out the grant. These are the components of the programs that we're required to show that we have. And, oh my goodness.
Any significance in the ruins there? that we're looking
No,
at?
that's just,
Random Microsoft.
it's just
Random.
random.
Ah, I
Yeah,
see.
it's whatever the IT has decided pops up. It's different every time. So, wow, that's really small. I don't know how to fix that. Yours didn't do that when you plugged it in. Did it?
No.
Oh,
Might be
I'm
able to
gonna
do Control
show
Plus.
this digitally. So it's open in Google. All right, but I can go through the words. Right now we have 85 identified high ability students in the corporation. We do our identification in the spring, so we will.
You said how many? I'm sorry.
I think we are at 85 right now. We just had 2 withdraw, so we were at 87. So we will do our identification in the spring, bring some more in. Hopefully we'll find some that we might have missed before. We've really been working on our identification process and tracking. We want our high ability program to mirror the population that we serve. And so we're always constantly trying to find equitable ways to do that assessment. Traditional assessments don't always work with some of our multilingual learners or some of our twice exceptional learners. So we have switched over to a nonverbal assessment for our kindergartners and our second graders. It's called the Naglieri. I got to meet Mr. Naglieri at a conference. It was really kind of cool to be with this guy that wrote a fancy test. And then our 5th graders and our 8th graders will take the OLSAT test, which is a little more traditional achievement aptitude test for
Now,
that.
is there any correlation between high IQ and advanced learners?
Yes, the IQ, a high IQ is required
But
to
it's
be
not
identified.
always that way.
Yes, it
Usually,
is.
oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yes. So our kids that are identified as high ability at APA are our students with the higher IQs. We do use our local norms with some of the achievement scores for our kids that are at a bubble range, but there's a set that they call the school ability index, which is basically IQ, which is it's about 120, and then there's some leeway, give or take, because of testing errors.
So that doesn't mean that some people are very good with numbers or math, engineering, not good at anything else, vice versa.
Right, you can
So
have.
really, a high ability is a little bit bigger than that.
Yeah, you can have, you can be considered high ability in math only, or in language arts
okay.
only, or you can be considered, we get identified general intellect. So if you are equally high ability in both domains, those are the 3 areas that Indiana uses for identification.
Oh, I see.
But taking pictures of it.
So this is our, This is the interactive one.
Yeah, I don't know how to get to your inactive one. Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. It's this one. Okay. And so I created this, put it together for us just so that was all in one place. Resources. It's a little blurrier up there than intended, but this is set up for anybody, both parents, students, and teachers that need to know more about the program, what our identification processes are. But as they go through,
Yeah, you just
I'm
said.
not sure if I know.
I would exit the full screen.
Okay.
There you go.
Yeah, so as they go through our paper here, this is just the cover, but everything is interactive on this, in this document. So each one of these links will jump you immediately to that page. So if you wanted to just know more about a curriculum and instruction, you would just click that link and it takes you to our curriculum and instruction. This is gonna be on our APA webpage. We already have a high ability link there. And then this just kind of describes all of our curriculum. Down below, there's links to Indiana state standards. And then teachers can go here and find the link to the national gifted standards for students, as well as right here, Indiana has a lot of tiered curriculum and project lessons that they've already compiled for us. So that link teachers can use to get to that thing, to those lessons. And then if they hit the little jets, it takes them back to the table of contents and goes from there. So each page, just a quick program overview. It tells what our mission statement is as a high ability program. And we aligned our mission and our vision and our program values with the school's mission and vision as well, along with what those high ability values are in general. And then, but you guys all have a copy, so I wasn't not gonna pay to necessarily.
Yes. And I am posting this in Boardable for you as well.
And then we have our identification plan, which is a requirement of the state. How we define what high ability is, so I can answer some questions, what our identification process is, and then the types of assessment pieces that we use here at APA.
So if you had a child that was tested and they weren't quite high ability, like 1 year, they get tested like each year then, or how does that
They don't
work?
get tested each year. What we do is called front loading with those students, and front loading is where we go ahead and we take that student and we put them into the class with our other high ability learners and expose them to that high ability differentiation in their classroom, to keep feeding that potential ability that they have, and then they get reassessed with their grade level. So the state of Indiana requires that we test everybody in kindergarten, second grade, and fifth grade. They go back and forth about 8th grade, so we're still going to do 8th grade just to see if we can catch a few before we go into high school, to try to challenge those students. But that's when they'll be, and then in the in-between years, a teacher can always ask, like sometimes we have some move-in kids, like right now we have some kids that are new to us in 3rd grade that I know that I'm going to evaluate in the spring because they came to us from other schools, and other schools don't send very great records a lot of the times. So I suspect that these students will be identified as high ability students, and especially when we take local norms into effect, into consideration, that I think there'll be a couple more that we identify in those classes.
Is there such a thing as an average score for, let's say, all children, I think, what is it, 2 and 5, grades 2 and 5, that take the test? I was just curious if there is such a thing.
There is not an average, there's not an average scores. There's average range. I mean, the average IQ is like 90 to 110. So you could say that they fall in that percentile rank. So they also go into different stay nine. So we're looking for kids that are in like the 8th and 9th or 9th stay nine. A true high ability student that is going to transfer, like if they transferred out of our school and went to any school in the state or the country, they're going to need to be in the 95th or higher percentile on their achievement tests, in addition to having that higher IQ as well. We use our local norms, and so most of our high ability kids hit anywhere from 85 to that 95 percentile on those students. So that I have that. So that's all this document is a resource for parents, students, and the teachers. There is a process, like if we have students that we did our evaluation and they didn't, we didn't identify them as that, their parents can go here and fill out an appeals if they want us to look at those students in a different way. We are required to look further into more data and information and do that kind of information with that. I have not had any parents appeal any of our decisions on those yet, but we are prepared if that ever happens. We have a plan in place. And then also here within this document is links for the parents to find that, or maybe not. I might have to add that back in there. I do have the form created, and then sometimes it's necessary for a student to exit the program, so you have to have exit procedures placed. That could be you have a student who is just, we've put them into the program and identified them, and they're just not performing well in that high ability cluster. It's not working for them. And it's very similar to a student that would be through our MTSS program for any of the other pieces that we would do. We would put them on we would meet with the parents and the student, create a goal of where we want them to be with the teachers. This is what we're not accomplishing. What can we do in the classroom to help them accomplish that and start reaching those potentials? We will set a goal and set a minimum of a 6-week time period and reevaluate in 6 weeks. Did we make our goal? Did we not make our goal? And then we can make a decision at that time if they need to exit the program. That can come from teacher requests. A teacher can say, hey, I don't think this is working for the student. The student could also request, hey, this isn't working for me. And the parent can request immediate, and they can choose to refuse the 6-week period. Like if they want their kids out of the program, then we'll take them out of the program if that's what they want. So here on this page is all those request forms, as well as the teacher has to do progress reporting while they do that. So all those documents are located in one place for our teachers as well.
Is that hard to do, like once you're in a class, like I'm thinking like high school, is that hard to do to like, you're not meeting this, so we're gonna move you back? Is that harder to do at the high school level?
It is harder to do at the high school level, especially if they were in an honors class and then they want to be removed out of the honors class for that, just because they go at different pacing rates. The honors classes sometimes accelerate a little bit more, but oftentimes, like with our history ones, they're just digging deeper, so that won't. So probably it's more subject based on how hard it is to switch into a different class. And then of course we're so small, scheduling sometimes would play a role, because there might not be a non-honors English class offered at the same time that your honors English class was. So it doesn't happen very often that we do that though. It's more often students that are in traditional, like just the regular class, that get bumped into those honor classes, and that's a little bit easier jump.
So it sounds like it's they're in all of the other classes with everybody else, but in certain areas, that is where they would have like an advanced history class, for example. Is that pretty much how it works?
Yes, yep, exactly.
It's not like there's a wing of the school that's for advanced or nothing like that?
Fortunately, no, we're not big enough to have a pull-out program like that where we would do that. So we usually use, there's several different ways you can provide high ability services. We tend to have to use the clustering approach, where we have like a small cluster within a gen ed classroom. One of the struggles with that is what's recommended when you do that, that the other kids that are non-high ability in that classroom be of your average learners, and really that is the one like level of learners that we don't have a lot of those in between students at APA. We have the struggling students, and then we have the students that are high achieving and high ability students. So sometimes it's hard to fill that class so much with them. But I see that balancing out more in the younger grades right now. So I think COVID hit our average learners hard, and we're starting to see some rebound with that. So this just has our instructional plan. One of our main goals for the high ability program is in the next 4 or 5 years, because it's one of our super long terms, is to align and have a more concrete curriculum provided for high ability students, which is a little bit harder because of the way that we service our students with our differentiation versus having a standalone classroom. Our 6th grade, it does get pulled out for English or math with Mr. Kramer. He's working towards his high ability certification. He's halfway done. We have a high school teacher that is going to start in either the summer or the fall to start getting his high ability certification. And then we have 2 other teachers, myself, that have our high ability certification as well. And then, yeah, so this kind of gives a little description of how we serve our kids. And then this is our next big goal at APA, is to create a guidance and counseling plan that is specific to our high ability learners. They have some really specific, unique needs sometimes with counseling. They have increased anxiety, highly perfectionist kids, fear to fail. And so there's just sometimes unique approaches that our counseling department needs to have in place for these students. All 3 of the people that I deemed as part of our guidance and counseling plan, they're all going to a professional development at Ball State to learn more about this. Cassie Van Sant, who is the 6 through 12 counselor, has already, she did high ability counseling classes and as part of her undergraduate work, so she really brings a lot of expertise to that program this year. So we've been able to pull together some of our goals and our strategies that we want to start implementing as a team. And so this has definitely been an area when you have to grade yourself every year when you do this. So this is definitely an area that the last few years I had to score us a little lower on, just because we weren't there yet. And with our new team that we have in place, they're all on board with looking at those and helping our students get what they need out of their counseling. And then we provide professional development for our teachers. There's a place on here that the teachers can go and click and request, if they want to go to a professional development in this area, then I can help them find it. And we use the high ability grant to fund those pieces for them.
Oh, that's good.
Because absolutely, it comes nowhere near covering any kind of salary thing. It's a really tiny grant. So we get materials for our classrooms, and I bought basewood for Cameron Moore to do create shields or something with our laser cutter, those kind of things. And then there's a goal that this summer, hopefully we can provide some micro-credentialing, which is just in-house PD for the teachers that want to become more expertise on this. I am working at our next professional development day with both buildings, just to kind of clarify what high ability characteristics are and what they are not, and who our high ability students are and who they are not. And then we open, this is just corporation contacts for anybody that's looking to try to get a hold of us. We've started a conversation with the academic teams at both buildings on how to increase engagement in these students, because just because they're high ability does not mean that they're high achieving right now. And we have several high ability students that are not reaching their potential because either lack of motivation, not engaged with the type of curriculum that they're being presented with, it's not of interest to them, and that's a typical high ability thing. If it's not interesting to them, they don't get engaged with it and they don't really care. So that is a long process. There's no quick answer to what we can do to continue to bring these, get them to accept challenges so that they will be in the honors classes and those higher level thinking classes that could maybe get them more engaged, and 2, how to help them be successful once they're in there.
Our Ball State people I know said they interviewed a lot of kids, and boredom, not being challenged, was a problem. Do we find that, is that a common complaint with our high ability kids? Do they seem to feel like you know, what they're really interested in pursuing, that we're doing a good job? I'd be
I think
curious.
some of them will always say that that is an issue for them because sometimes what we're required to teach by the state is not in their interest level, but we're kind of bound by what those state requirements are.
Yeah.
But I think we're doing a really good job of increasing the amount of engaging curriculum that we're bringing in for our students. We have some junior achievement, some financial literacy things that were coming in, and while it's not necessarily just for our high ability students, but it does reach those kids in different areas. So we're going to have a JA day at APA and at the elementary school in April. I'm going to talk, I just got some note, maybe doing a stock market challenge that they can do through there. So I made a really good connection with those guys too, that we can maybe do some smaller other programs and things like that. And the stock market challenge, I'm going to try to talk Mr. Ock into leading a few of our high achieving on our NWA, but not necessarily high achieving grades with our math students, to see if maybe doing something like that will engage them.
Yeah, yeah.
I like the pic.
What?
I like the picture.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, this is a good brochure.
What?
There's a couple of familiar faces in there.
Yeah. Yep. Oh yeah, yep. 2 of them. Yep. Like yeah, and one of them's my kid. Because, so
I know a couple.
Yeah, Yvonne is my kid, one of my son's best friends. So.
Well, I had 2 cousins that were certifiably genius IQ, but the high IQ and ability does not always, like you said, translate into
achievement.
Of course, they're both dead now, so I guess it doesn't matter. But anyhow, well, a few years older than me. Yeah, they one was didn't fit in too well with society, and the other was just plain lazy. So I don't.
Yeah.
Something to be said for good old average. I think most of us don't have to worry about all that stuff, those credentials.
Yes.
Matthew can call to make his own oil change appointments.
That's hard, and then you have to talk to people.
That's his biggest problem, is like talking to people. And
Yes. I will defend that high ability thing.
super smart, high ability, but
Well, all right. So thank you very much.
Thank you very
Genius is
much.
in the corner.
yes, thank you.
So very much appreciated. Always very enlightening when you guys come, right? Very detailed. And just that actually is on the High Ability website on the webpage.
Awesome.
So play around and make sure that it is working to your level.
Yeah, I don't know if the actual one of the. I think I might be missing a form, but
Well, it should update in real time, I think.
apparently my editors didn't catch that.
All right, so I have nothing else on our program. So, ma'am, it's all you.
Any other discussions?
No executive sessions.
No executive sessions today.
No.
So
I know you guys are.
I get to watch my Tuesday night television shows.
I make
Well-
a motion to adjourn our meeting.
I'll second.
all right, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right.